I just want to give you guys a quick tutorial on Final Cut Pro. There are a bunch of videos out there that show you how to use it, but I could not really find a single video that captures like the very basics for the beginner. For example, if you're starting to use Final Cut Pro for the first time, what would you do? Where would you start from? And how can you learn basics in a very simple video? And that's what my intent is today, is to teach you guys very, very, very basics, that you can at least get your project started, and you can go ahead and refine yourself from there onwards. So just want to give you guys a quick overview. So this is the Final Cut Pro. This is the latest version of Final Cut Pro. And looking at the screen, you're probably wondering, there's so many windows and what exactly, those windows are. So this section is where you have your events and your projects, that you get access to. There are 3 tabs on the top, and we're going to talk about the other 2, but the very first one kind of shows you the actual project, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to create these and work with it. The second option will take you to the actual photos and music and sound effects, that you can search in your computer, and then drag it to your timeline. And then the third one is basically your tiles and generators. And so we're going to be talking about those a little bit later. So let's stick to the very first one for this particular video. This screen kind of shows what's inside here. So this is nothing but just more like a folder opening into this window. This is going to be your main screen, where anything that you do on your timeline is going to demonstrate right there. So this is more like a television screen that you're seeing what you're working with. On the right hand side, you have this window, which is controlled by the top tabs. So for example, like if you're editing a text, this is where you make your changes, your colors, your transition, size, tracking, your transparency, and all those things. So there's a bunch of settings that you can play around with when you're working with any particular text on your timeline. So this is kind of like the same thing, your more options for your text, the size and other stuff, how center you want it and things like that. Then you have your color grading, and all those things can be controlled right from here. Now let's come to our timeline. So this is the very main important screen that you see at the very bottom. This is your timeline. This is where you drag your media, whether it's sound or your video, so both videos and audios can be played over here. And anything that you play, you will see a result right there on the screen. So this is kind of like a live transmission, of playing your video, and then you see the live transmission right there on this screen. On the right hand side, you have these 2 tabs that you're going to be using the most. So this, if you just click on this, you get a full timeline. But if you click on this, you get a little bit more options, and there are 2 things in this particular one. You have your transitions and the effects. So we're going to talk about those a little bit later. Then you have, a couple of other options that I would say don't worry about it right now. That once you get advanced in using this, you'll have a better idea of what those are and how to use them. But don't sweat yourself. The more complex the stuff that you get into, the more confused you may get. So don't worry a little bit too much about those things. On the very center of this, you see these things. We're going to be talking a little bit about this too. This is kind of like transforming your video right from here. You're cropping and distorting, so you can change your videos and make changes to your videos right there. Kind of like editing, cutting and cropping, pictures, videos, and things like that. This is kind of like a balance, auto correction, you can call it. We're going to be using that later on as well. And this is kind of like the time, how fast, you want your video to run and things like that, or how slow do you want it to run. This is the play button, where you can basically just play, whatever speed that you want your videos to play. So this is the overall view. Now let's get into the actual creating of the project, and how do you work with your libraries and projects and events. So let's get into that. I want to start from like the very basics. So let's get to the core of this video. So the very first thing you need to know is the three things, which are project, event, and library. If you understand these three, it will help you really understand how to start a project. So on the left hand side, you see these things, right? These two. These are your libraries. Under library, these are the events that you have. And under events, right here, are your projects. So library is the main, then you have event, then you have projects. So it's kind of like a big main folder. You can call library the big main folder that you see on the left hand side of the screen right here. Then you have events under it, which is, for example, this HowtoDoit. And then you have your projects under those events. So let me go ahead and create a new library for you guys so you can see. So if I create a new library, this is going to be, let's call it test one. And now this is where you want to save your library at. So this is under movies. You can select any document, on your desktop or anywhere you want to. So I'm just going to leave it in movies. Okay, so now you can see before I only had these two, but now I have test one that I created. Now under test one, this comes in by default, but I'm going to go ahead and create an event under the library test one. So now create an event, and which library do you want the event in? Now as you can see, you have the library, you have test one and untitled, which is the three that you have here, which is test one, untitled, library. So don't get confused. These are the three that I already had. The two of them already existed, but we created a library, named it as test one. So I'm going to leave it at test one. The event name, let's call it test two. So I'm creating a event under the library test one. I'm creating an event test two. And here you can select, what format you want. So these are the standard format that I normally use for any of my YouTube videos. You can change it the way you want it. I don't really use 4K or 5K videos, just 1080p high definition, 1920 by 1080, 24p. These are the frames per second that you want. Now, this is where it can get into tricky how and which one you should really use. So I always use the Apple Pro Resolution 422 high quality. That's the one I normally use. Leave it at stereo, 48 kilohertz. Sound is good. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now you can see under my library test one, now I have an event called test two, and my event is empty right now. So under an event, once you create an event, it automatically creates an untitled project. But if you really want to create a new project, you can always go, because sometimes you may have multiple projects under one event. So you can have an event named house party, and under that event you may have different multiple videos from different cell phones or recording devices. So you may have a project called camera one, camera two, and things like that. So that this is the reason you have the capability. So let me go ahead and create a project right here, and let me call this project. And over here you can see the project that I'm creating is under test two, which is the event that we created. So project name is going to be, for example, camera one. And now over here, these things comes by default, but you have to, the codec is the 422HU that we selected, but you do have an option to select it from here as well. But these settings will be standard as to what you created for your event. So we're going to click OK. So now you can see that now I have a library called test one, and under that library I have an event called test two, and under that event I have a project, untitled project, which was already a default, and then the camera one, which I created. So if you really want to delete one of the projects that you're not using, you can move it to trash. That will go away. You can even right click on this and delete the entire event. So move event to trash. That will delete the entire event, but of course it will ask you, hey, do you really want to do that? I don't want to do that because I want to show you guys more tutorial. So anyways, this is the very basics of how you create an event and how do you create a project within the Final Cut Pro. So for example, I have a project, untitled. and under this untitled projects, I have how to do it. And under how to do it, I have this untitled project. This is exactly under this project is the actual project. Okay guys, so in this video we learned how to create a new project, event, or library. So I think that's it for this video. In the next video that I'm going to be showing, I'm going to show you how you can bring in a video in your timeline and make edits and use some of the advanced tool in this Final Cut Pro. But keep checking out in the description below. I'm going to be posting a link pretty soon for my second video. And moving forward, I'm going to be making more videos on how to create and access some of the Final Cut Pro advanced tools. So guys, if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel and like the video.